Many of us who work in public relations or wider public affairs believe that the most important aspect of any media relations training program is the journalist. Funnily enough, it's not. The most critical aspect of any successful media training and subsequently media engagement is your principal. In other words, the individual you have to train. Some executives lack social skills, lack people skills, lack that critical emotional component that is paramount for meaningful human-to-human connection, not just with the journalists, but critically for TV and radio interviews for a real connection with the public. This masterclass will provide you with clear actions and steps you can take to turn even the most awkward and insufferable principle into a media sweetheart. We have a tendency to speak a lot in this line of work, and sadly to waffle even more. Training an executive of any business in staying on message and using key messages is exactly the opposite of that which some of us love so much. Think about this. The clearer your principal conveys his or her key messages, the less room for interpretation and pushback or further questioning there is. When they say something, they need to speak in sentences, not in paragraphs. There is a well-defined time for a soap story and a time for punchy and pithy message. Never mix between the two, and never allow your principal to assume that they have the expertise to navigate between the two easily. Neophyte spokespersons do not have this mastery. It takes years, even decades of public speaking to shift between personas. Make sure your principal is properly prepared for the interview he or she is supposed to give. For instance, a radio interview requires a much higher focus on voice modulation, tone, and pitch than a TV interview or a press conference or briefing do. In a radio or podcast interview, the audience does not see your spokesperson. They can only relate through the emotions or reactions, the intonation of their words. So be very careful how you train your principal and make sure that they understand why each media platform requires a different set of actions from them. Explain to them the psychology of social interaction in all its forms, but keep it brief and simple. Bridging to the message, in other words, bringing the conversation back to where you want it to be, or channeling it in that direction, requires work. And deflecting difficult questions or answering them without getting angry or emotional requires even much more work. To get this done right and to ensure your principal can swiftly navigate through, often, the cat and mouse game played so well by seasoned journalists, practice makes perfect. Make sure that you allocate plenty of time to role plays involving very tough, very hard, and difficult to hear interrogation lines almost. Destabilize your principal emotionally, get them angry, emotional, and ready to pack up and go. Only this way you can establish a real baseline of their triggers and of their no-go zones. Once you identify all these pinch points, start working with them. You may be surprised or not, depending on how new you are at this, that proper executive media relations training is a mix between a religion confession, if you wish, and counseling. You need to form a psychological connection and a foundation of trust with your principal to allow them the freedom to push back on any unwanted questions or be able to bring back the conversation where they want it to be. Media interviewing is a constant dialogue, a game of give and take, where both parties should, ideally, lead and be led. The critical point regarding your principal's ability to control the interview is to always be aware of what is being said and what is being implied. They should, at all times, be calm and controlled and approach the interview as a business negotiation, not as a personal vendetta or goose chase. The moment the rational part of their brain takes over, it's unlikely they will lose control. Now, coaching someone to handle media during times of crisis or when issues emerge publicly requires a lot of honesty and verifiable facts. Emotions of any kind have no place at this time. Remorse and regret, as and where appropriate, should be forthcoming. However, remember the fundamental rules that you must abide by so that you can convey its criticality to your principal. No assumptions and no blame should ever be assigned. Every single comment or remark made needs to be backed up by verifiable facts, not by "I think" or "I believe." This is the pinnacle of your media training efforts, and if you went through all the steps in the order as I have presented it on this slide, your job is done. All your training scenarios, or all your role plays if you wish, need to be as realistic as possible and as close to that principal situation as possible. For instance, if your principal is the CEO of a mining company whose political ties to a government in Latin America have come under international media scrutiny, do not create a scenario where you question them about their diversity and inclusion policy. Keep it very close to the case in point. Be the worst, as in the most feared, journalist they will ever have to face if you really want them to succeed. This is how I do it, and I can promise you that I saved several multinational businesses and their CEOs with this approach. Your role in this scenario is not to play house or offer them a shoulder to cry on. You are there to prepare them for the worst possible media interview of their life. Trust me, get that right, and they will forever be in your debt, and you will have formed a bond that will last a lifetime. I did. If you can, as in if the company has positive or good news to share to counterbalance whatever has gone wrong, make sure that this is mentioned and emphasized. Teach them how to highlight their achievements and apologize for their mistakes. No one is perfect, and no one's closet is skeleton-free. How one owns up, that makes all the difference. If you can, and if they allow it, record them in the training sessions, but make sure that no one, absolutely no one, outside that circle of trust in the training room ever gets their hands on those recordings. If you have a team of technicians with you, make sure that every single file is destroyed, as in completely erased, at the end of the day, and that all the staff in that room, the principal staff or yours or contractors, sign an NDA with hefty financial penalties attached. Depending on who you train, and I had to do this once, make sure that you get a team of security experts to swipe the training room and all the individuals who have access to it for bugs and other recording devices. Also, make sure that no mobile phones make it into the training room and there is no Wi-Fi enabled there. It is called a clean room. The situations in which you will have to go to these lengths are very rare, but you might have to do it one day. Always remember that, with the exception of a crisis or issue situation where the rebuttal or defense are the main points of that training, you need to have a very clear message that you need your principal to convey. That message can and should be conveyed in a variety of ways, but the final point needs to be the same. Did we say what we wanted or needed to? Secondly, make sure that your principal needs to own the interview. In other words, are they sufficiently emotionally and psychologically balanced to control their reactions? Can they deflect and redirect the interview? Can they stop or start as they wish? Can they identify potential traps? And most importantly, are they uncomfortable with the silent moments? Thirdly, your principal cannot allow the interview to end without them re-emphasizing the key message they wanted to put across. They need to draw their own conclusion and gracefully round up or sum up everything the interview has been about. Allowing the journalist to do that, especially when it comes to hostile journalists, is asking for trouble. Once you've done all the hard work above, now the easy and fun part begins. Ask your principal an open question whose answer should lead to the key message they need to convey. Observe them carefully, correct them when they get it wrong, then get them to start over. Focus on the media channel their interview is going to be aired on. Explain to them the difference between the various platforms, if necessary. Make sure their manners and sociability are at the right level, and if they are an alpha individual, that their aggressiveness or snobbery are in check at all times. For every statement your principal makes, ask them to see the evidence backing that up. If they don't know where it is, or if they don't have it or can't find it in time, exclude that statement completely and make sure they understand why that is a must. Your principal's posture, clothing, appearance need to be a perfect fit for purpose. They need to look relatable, clean, and respectful. They cannot use colloquialisms, bad jokes, invectives, pick their nose, scratch their crotch, yawn, chew gum, etc. They need to completely behave. Observe them first, and then correct when or where necessary. Remember, you are there to help them, hence never ever be afraid to mention anything you disapprove of, and always be professional in your approach. I would suggest you take a screenshot of this slide if you are in the beginning of your media training journey, and if you are a seasoned trainer and are watching this, you may wish to print it and gift it to your current and future clients. These are the rules they need to remember before any media interview of any kind. And if they embrace these 7 concepts and all the learnings underpinning them, it is unlikely they will ever have any issues or that they will be caught with their guard down. The final cosmetic points, if I may call them so, to any media training are very important for that first lasting impression and for the public's 8-second like or dislike decision. The voice and all its modulations are highly critical in radio interviews and podcasts. The principal's overall image is crucial in TV interviews, press conferences, and vlogs. The principal's body language is fundamental in establishing rapport with the journalist and, where appropriate, the public. The way your principal dresses for that interview matters dramatically. Teach them the language of seemingly unimportant dressing mistakes and what all of them convey. I hope this masterclass will help you become a fantastic media trainer, and if you have any questions that I haven't already answered so far, please do ask. Thank you.